I'm Lior Frankel, and this is another episode of Popcorn, a podcast that helps you to adapt to the new world, adapt to the changes we're experiencing in the world of work, in our perceptions, in education, in science, art, medicine, psychology. Basically, everywhere we look, things have changed recently. What does it lead us to? What can we do to take advantage of the opportunities that this new world provides instead of being scared of them and getting lost in the previous one? This episode will be in English. Due to a very special guest that is visiting Israel at the moment, David Travers. He's the president of ZipRecruiter, the fastest growing career marketplace in the US. And I just told him before that I know ZipRecruiter because I'm an early adopter of podcasts, and ZipRecruiters were one of the first ones to put ads on podcasts back in 2015 already, I think. But you'll be surprised to hear what David, can I call you Dave? Yeah. Okay, so what Dave did 25 years ago, he was a strategic planner, senior analyst at the Walt Disney Company from 99 to 2002, and he was an executive assistant to the National Security Advisor in the White House. We never had anyone from the White House here, between 2002 and 2003. Currently, he serves as ZipRecruiter's president after serving as its CFO until recently. Also, he is a managing partner at BasePoint Ventures and a partner at Rusty Canyon Partners, both venture capital firms. Dave holds a BA in International Relations from Stanford and an MBA from Harvard. Wow. Since he is the president, the leading employment marketplace, I'll be asking him about data he has great access to, including things like, is remote work still as popular as it was during COVID? What's up with pay transparency? We don't have it in Israel, and we really want to hear about this. How confident are job seekers these days, taking into consideration where the market is? And can we measure it, and how do you measure it? I know there's some index that you'll probably teach me about. How do job seekers feel about ChatGPT and the AI revolution? And how many employees have been laid off recently? And what's up with them? Do they find new jobs or not? Well, we'll hear a lot of interesting things about what's going on in the US because, again, you have this data. I'll also ask him what's his connection to Israel. How was working with Condoleezza Rice, right? Meeting Israelis and Palestinian leaders together. But let's get the music in and we'll get this party started in a second.
So it was my first day at the White House, and my very first task that Condi gave me as her new executive assistant when she was the National Security Advisor was, she said, I'm rushing down to a meeting with the National Security Council, the president and the cabinet secretaries down in the White House Situation Room. I need you to bring a most recent copy of the president's speech he's about to give so I can distribute it to what was called the principals, the other secretaries in the cabinet on the National Security Council. And so I was like, this is a simple task. I got this one. I see in my email, even though it's my first day, the speech is there. It's been sent to me. Great. I bring it down. I crack open the door to the National Security Council meeting in the White House, hand her the copies, and am thinking, I crushed it on my first assignment. She looks at it and she shakes her head at me and says, this is not the most recent version. And so she's like, go to the speechwriter's office and just get it now. Wow. And so I didn't know where the speechwriter's office was, but I asked somebody. They looked a little strangely that I wouldn't know where this was. I got there. He wasn't there. So I ended up just rooting around on his desk. I had draft 5 and I had distributed that. I found draft 7. I figured that's got to be better than something more recent. And I came back in feeling like I was about 1 inch tall. Tried again, and at least that time it seemed to be good enough. I still don't know whether it was the most recent draft, but it seemed to be satisfying.
It was later than the first one.
Exactly.
So who was the president at that time?
George W. Bush was the president. So it was 2002.
For the second time?
No, it was his first administration. So, so his dad had already been president, but he was president in his first term.
How do you get to work at the White House?
So Condoleezza Rice was my advisor when I was an undergrad, and she was a professor at Stanford. And so I was an international international relations major. I took her course. I would TA'd a course for her, and I kept in touch with her. And then she wrote me a letter of recommendation to go to business school. I got in, thanks in part to her. I came by the White House to thank her for writing that letter of recommendation, say I'm off to business school.
Yeah.
And she said, hey, by the way, my executive assistant gave notice today. Would you ever consider working for me? And I said, just so happens, the one thing I'd rather do than go to business schools is work for you. And she says, do you happen to have a resume on you? And I pulled out a resume that I had ready and standing by, and it all just worked out. It took 4 more months of security clearances
for sure.
to get there, but that's how it's
to
started.
make sure that you're a good citizen.
Exactly.
Was it, other than what you've done there, was it stressful just to know that this is your job? I mean, when you were outside of job, you know what I mean? At evenings or at weekends or with friends, etc.
Incredible. In fact, because I would get phone calls, I had a secure phone in my apartment. I would get phone calls in the middle of the night saying something had blown up somewhere. Do we need to wake up Dr. Rice? And might she need to wake up the president to let them know? So it was extremely stressful, and I felt, I was a young, just married guy, and DC is a fun town, but I was like, I got to have my wits about me, like a glass of wine or two, and that's it. And at any moment, I could be called in for whatever might happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is stressful.
It was very stressful. But incredible.
But is it more or less stressful than being a partner in 2 VCs companies?
Way more stressful than that.
More stressful, right?
Everything is put in perspective after, even though I wasn't the policymaker or anything like that, but just the responsibility of getting the right speech to the right person, et cetera, felt way more stressful. That puts ZipRecruiter or investing people's money or whatever, it's all in perspective.
Yeah, I actually see that sometimes, people who had very stressful jobs in the beginning of their careers, other things that look to other stress are for them like easier. And it happens a lot in Israel because the army is obligatory.
Right.
And there's so much stress that could happen to you in the army. I don't mean going to war. I mean just the day to day. And so some people who graduated the army, they're like, now everything is like it's
exactly right. It establishes a new baseline against which everything is subsequently measured. And I literally remember walking to work every day in Washington, D.C., with a knot in my stomach, just thinking like, the most fundamental thing I can do is make sure no one dies today because I screwed something up.
Wow.
That was in my mind. And it was, a year after 9/11 when I started, and the mood was tense.
Wow. This is, okay, sounds tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, how did you get to Israel?
Yeah. Well, the first time I got to Israel was 20 years ago with Condi, but the reason I got to Israel this time is because ZipRecruiter has a major office here and a major tech hub. So we have well over 100 engineers and product people, and growing fast, building, bleeding edge technology to bring job seekers and employers together.
Yeah. But how do you explain this? Because ZipRecruiter, I'm not even sure we have the website working in Israel, right? It's mostly for the US.
Correct.
So how come the developers are here?
Yes. So a bunch of them,
I know they're good, but they're expensive.
Yes, they are expensive. They're expensive in the US, and we have a bunch there as well. And it was just one of those things where we found a couple great people here, and we had a couple that were scattered about in other places, one in Canada, one in the UK or France or something. And this was 5 or 6 plus years ago. And once we got a couple, they started telling their friends, and all of a sudden we had this amazing pipeline of talent. And these are people who had, speaking of military service, they'd had experience finding different needles in different haystacks together, and it was a sort of problem that a matching problem that they thought about before, and we found really great success building a team.
Amazing. Okay, so we'll get to this this side of the story in a few minutes, but I still want to go to your first visit in Israel.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Yeah, so Condi was national security advisor and came here to visit with both the then Prime Minister Sharon and the then Prime Minister, I believe, of the Palestinian Authority of Us. And so I, came and was the backbencher taking notes in meetings with both of them. And so
were you scared to get here? Because
No.
I hear sometimes from tourists or people who don't live in the Israel, also from the States.
Yeah.
To them, all they see on the news is bombing and a very high tense area. But you weren't scared.
No, I was not scared. I mean, I had a Secret Service, protection bubble. That helps.
That helps.
But even this time, I found that people would ask me, like, "Are you sure you can go to this trip? We're here today." And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." I mean, like, I honestly, I feel more concerned in LA, unfortunately, than I do in Tel Aviv.
How come?
Yeah, because there's a bunch of stuff happening there as well, and we've had problems with crime being on the rise and things like that. But I feel safe there too. But honestly, I feel very safe here.
Yeah. Did you learn something about Israelis on the first visit? I mean, something that stayed with you, and it's okay if you're offensive. We are very cool and okay about. We want to get the gossip.
You want the real.
What
do
they think about us?
I will tell you that it was not Condi's first trip, but she described to me as we were flying here what her first trip was like, because she knew it was my first trip, and she described it as coming home to a place you've never been before.
Wow.
Which was an amazing way of framing something. And so I felt from minute one, just like on this trip, incredibly welcomed into this very tight-knit community. It feels very different and more, there's more of a sense of shared purpose and shared community than we have in the States. And so I felt incredibly welcome and warmly greeted.
That's great to hear. Yeah. I mean, we have so many internal problems these days that it's actually optimistic to hear that.
Absolutely.
And so just one last thing before we go to the adult things.
Yes.
Can I say adults thing? I mean, or is it?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's up with Walt Disney?
Yes.
What did you do there?
Yes.
Senior analyst?
Yes, exactly. So I was, my first job out of school was in the strategic planning department at Disney, where we were the internal sort of consultant and investment bank. So my job was to figure out what rides should we build next at Disneyland Paris.
Nice.
Like theme park rides. Or, should we start a co-branded credit card and have Disney rewards points? Or should we acquire this 3D technology company that we could apply in any money?
And that was 1999.
Yes, 99 to 02.
How did data look that these days? I mean, did you work with papers?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, making photocopies and early versions of PowerPoint. We're here in Microsoft offices today.
What is like Lotus 123 or what?
Yeah, no, it wasn't quite that. But AOL Instant Messenger was the way to communicate instantaneously with folks, and it was a different time. And we had made investments in a number of different search engines, and it wasn't clear which one would win. And unfortunately, Google was not one of the ones we had invested in.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Okay. So back to today.
Yeah.
I mean, until recently, you were the CFO of ZipRecruiter, and I heard that the whole journey for you to go into ZipRecruiter was actually a bit interesting.
Yeah.
What happened there?
So I was first an investor in the company. So I spent a decade after I went to business school. After the White House, I went to business school, and then I spent a decade as an early stage technology investor for a venture capital firm called Rustic Canyon and then Base Point in LA. and invested in a bunch of amazing early stage companies, and had a lot of fun doing that. I have always loved, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I always loved getting to work with entrepreneurs and always sort of idolized the entrepreneurial process and guts that it took to start the entrepreneurial journey. And so I loved getting to work with multiple entrepreneurs. And one of those amazing entrepreneurs I got to know and invest in was Ian Siegel at ZipRecruiter. So I started out on the board as an investor. And then when it was time to get a new CFO, the long-running joke between me and Ian every time he would turn down a term sheet from me because the company bootstrapped for the first 4 years was, well, we don't need your money, but why don't you come work here? And we laughed that off a few times, and then it became less and less of a joke. And so after a year of being on the board, I decided to jump in with both feet. And at the time, I sort of thought,
I never heard of this story.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to go the other way. You're supposed to be a successful operator and then become a VC. So I got it backwards, and I highly recommend it. When you have this amazing 10-year process of pattern recognition of what a good company looks like and what you might be interested in, and this was too good an opportunity and too good an entrepreneur and too good a team to pass up.
Was it before or after it became a public company?
Oh, before. Long before. Yeah, years before.
So it was like how many employees?
Yeah, it was 150 employees.
150?
Yeah.
So you're an investor and you decided to go to be a CFO in a hyper-growth startup with 150 employees.
Yeah, exactly.
You are crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's a proof.
I know. I had this nice cushy job. I had this nice portfolio.
Going to,
then I went all in. Yeah, exactly.
And now you work, and it's the CFO. So CFO, for anyone who doesn't remember, it's the Chief Financial Officer.
Yeah.
Which means you're behind the, hopefully now it's Excel and not papers.
Yes, exactly.
Or Google Sheets. I don't know what you prefer. But that means long hours.
Yes.
And then, were you with them going public?
Yes, I was the CFO when we went public.
Another 1 or 2 years of hell, right?
Yeah. We had, what was interesting was the company was not in a rush to go public as fast as possible. We could have gone public right away when I became CFO, and that just wasn't our goal. And so it gave us the luxury of knowing already we were at a scale and we were headed down that path. And so unlike most companies who all of a sudden decide they're going to go public and then it's a rush in 6 months to get public, this was a 3 or 4 year preparatory process we went through where we got the time to we spent years interviewing potential board members. We spent a lot of time figuring out which advisors, which banker, which auditor, et cetera, we really wanted to, and that really made it much more enjoyable and much less of a, burn the midnight oil.
So you know what? I want to ask you from the investor eyes.
Yeah.
Because usually investors are the ones who push the company to move really, really fast.
Yes.
How come it didn't happen in this?
Well, in this case, the founders still controlled the company, even though they'd raised money, because it was really up to them. And they had been very clear with me and the other investors that we're not rushing to exit this business right away. We see something special here, and so everybody was aligned. The people who wanted a quick hit were selected out of the process.
And the crazy thing is that today, at least on Google, if you look at ZipRecruiter, it's like 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
Is that close to it still?
Yeah, it's about 1,400.
1,400?
Yeah.
Public?
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah. So
this is crazy.
Yeah, we have been an efficient, because we started out as a bootstrap company. The very fabric of the culture is the idea of knowing what the value of a dollar is. And so we have been very efficient in terms of hiring employees, in terms of building out the company. We've been profitable very consistently. And so we were never one of these super high burn rate, lose money and just throw it all into growth companies. And we didn't hire at nearly the rate some others would have given the momentum we had.
This is crazy and interesting because you are the one who help others hire.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things to do is to be very thoughtful about it. And then when you find something that when it's time to hire, it's really time to hire.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to talk a little bit about the current workforce and the trends that you see from the data that because you're such a huge marketplace for both employers and employees, that gives you a lot of data about what's going on, what the trends. And it's not like I'm interested in the 41%, even though I do have it in front of me because you were kind enough to send it to me beforehand. But I more than that want to hear about the trend, like where the direction is. And even though it's the US but not the Israeli market, it's still very interesting for us for the known reasons. And so the first thing, I think this is like most interesting for the Israeli audience is pay transparency. What is it? Because I even heard that now in a few of the continents, it's going to be like a must. So can you explain to me, like I'm 5 years old, what is pay transparency? And then we'll talk about it a bit.
So it's basically a requirement in a couple of the states in the U.S., but not nationwide, that if you post a job, you need to show what the salary range for that job is. And for a current employee of the company, if they want to know what the range is for their current job, they can request that and you need to provide it.
So it's not like in general, it's for a specific job that you are now hiring for.
Correct.
Right? So I want to get a social media manager and the pay will be between $85,000 to $90,000 in the States. It's yearly. We talk with monthly, but well, Israel is like short-term thinking. we never know when it's over. And so, okay. So and I have to post it. So the people who are applying for this job, they know it. But also if I work at your company and I'm a social media manager, what happens if I get only 70 and I see this? So now it brings...
It's arming the employee or the job seeker to have a conversation that says, hey, you said the range here is 70 to 90. Why are you offering me 68 or 71? Why the low end of the range? I'm highly qualified. And so it's empowering with data the job seeker. Job seekers and employees obviously love this. And employers are nervous about it because they didn't, not because they want to be unfair. That is usually not the problem. Usually is they came up with their compensation system in a world where this was all shrouded and veiled. And they didn't have to expose the range that they were thinking.
It's like showing the cards.
Exactly. So now you got to show your cards. And so thinking through, what is my strategy if I have to declare it in advance? And do I want to show a super high range so I can attract the best candidates, or do I want to show a super low range so I don't have to pay too much, or some medium or a wide band or a narrow band? And people are still thinking this through.
And I guess it's mandatory in California as well, because California is always first, right? Weed and pay transparency.
New York and Colorado also.
And so why at all? I mean, the US is a capitalist nations. How come this that sounds so, socialist got into something that is mandatory?
I think there's some non-capitalist reasons about fairness and equality that come into it, but ultimately, I think, the free exchange of information is actually very good for capitalism. And so having a lack of transparency in general and a lack of flow of information between two sides of any marketplace has real cost and real friction. And so, and if you think about a negotiation where you're trying to find where the willingness to buy and the willingness to sell overlap, having more information out there is really good. And so...
just a general question. I know you're not an economist, but you've been a CFO, so maybe you know at least as much as an economist. Thinking about, in capitalism, at least these days, we want to prioritize or we want to optimize for spending, right? We want the market to move, and for that we need spending.
Yes.
So maybe this is one good reason to have everyone have a better salary, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think that there's a lot about this that is good for employers that they're scared of because they don't know what their strategy should be, but they're going to find that it's a forcing function on their compensation strategy so that they're actually going to benefit themselves. So if you have an employee who is feeling like they're likely underpaid, that is doing a good job, they're going to either be demotivated or likely to leave.
Right.
And this is a way you can demonstrate to a great employee without giving them a 15% raise that blows your bands out of the way. You're already at the top end of the range.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to go even a little bit farther, whatever the case may be. And simultaneously, it forces you in a way that you might not have to constantly keep track of, like, oh, wait a second, this really highly valued social media manager I have is actually 3 years into this and below the range I intend to pay.
Yeah.
And that's not good for anybody, and I'm not forced to confront that today.
Right. But also, it get me thinking, we usually talk about race to the bottom, but here, could it have race to the top? And well, that has good reasons to happen, but also, I'm thinking about, for example, ZipRecruiter.
Yeah.
Okay? It's a tech company.
Yeah.
And there's a site in Israel.
Yes.
For an international tech company, mostly American tech company. And now say the pay transparency happened in Israel.
Yeah.
So you have to say we pay that much to our developers. And now a media company or a news company, they need developers as well these days. But they have no way to compare their rate to the one that ZipRecruiter has. Now, what can they do? Or I mean, maybe I don't know if you see it from the platform eyes, or I'm mixing your platform eyes
Sure.
and the president eyes of,
Sure.
of the tech company. It gets it really tough for the ones who can't pay that much.
Yes. Well, I think of it as not a race to the top or race to the bottom. It's a race to equilibrium. And so what this allows is less inefficiency, where there's a disequilibrium where somebody's paid way too much or way too little, or someone hasn't thought through why or how they should be paid. And so what this does is it forces, by shining sunlight on this issue, it forces everybody involved to say, hey, what is a reasonable equilibrium? And when you reach, in Economics 101, when you reach a reasonable equilibrium, that's where you get the most efficient outcome.
Yeah, and the best price.
Yes.
Okay, so I see here the data point I have about this is 41% of job seekers report that they are less inclined to apply for jobs when postings exclude pay information, which means that they didn't include what is the pay, or has a wide pay range, right?
Yes.
So I guess that means if they say, well, we're going to pay you anything between 40 to 140, that's like saying
you're
nothing.
You're opting out of
right?
saying anything. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And the law doesn't say anything about it? You can say, you can give this range?
It depends on which state, because it's not national yet, but there's some assumption that you need to be reasonable, but the details of what reasonable means has not been worked out yet. But what I would say is that, setting aside the fact that it's the law, exactly to your point, it's not just that 41% prefer or wouldn't apply, would consider not applying. It's that if you want the maximum amount of great talent out there to consider in your selection process, you will get way more candidates if you expose what's a realistic range.
Yeah.
And so we've seen that over and over again.
Okay, makes sense. So next, let's talk about something that's called Job Seeker Confidence Index. What's that?
Yes, so we systematically go out and measure multiple times per year how job seekers are feeling about their job search prospects and how they're feeling about what their likelihood of success ultimately is. And so this is a way of saying, for the job seekers in the economy, are they scared to leave their current job that they're miserable in, or they think they might get laid off because the company's not doing well or fired or whatever? Or are they like, oh yeah, I could go at any moment and go look for that. And so what we're seeing is, despite a lot of storm clouds, being speculated about gathering around the economy and some softness that we've seen in the economy, that job seeker confidence is pretty stable over the past quarter.
How come?
Yeah.
I mean, the market is much less confident.
Yes, no, exactly. There's a battle between the stock market, economist prognostications, and headlines that show layoffs, which are all negative, and the unemployment picture, which is unemployment is very low.
Yeah.
And so, the reality is people still it's cooled off significantly from the post-COVID reopening 18 months ago, but the economy, the job market's still quite good. And, job seeker confidence seems to be pretty robust, and it makes sense because unemployment is low.
Yeah, unemployment, I think I heard it on Professor Galloway's podcast that it's in
under 4%. Yeah.
Yeah, under 4%.
Yeah.
This is, I don't get it. I mean, talking about being an economist, there's some basic things in economics that it seems like they either do not work anymore or like in COVID, the stock market boomed.
Yeah.
How come? Everyone is stuck at home, can't work, have to help their kids, can get to school, etc. And the stock market booms. And now that the market is hard, unemployment is in all times low.
Yeah.
How is that?
Yes. So there are two parts to that, supply and demand. So on the supply side, people who left the workforce during COVID are coming back, but we're still not all the way back to pre-COVID levels of workforce. And simultaneously, our immigration policy, one of our sources of new able and willing workforce, has really slowed down. And so the supply, so the supply is constrained. And then on the demand side, there's been for a long time now, several quarters, a highly anticipated recession coming, but the recession, by many measures hasn't probably arrived yet.
Yeah.
And so lots of businesses are doing well and still need people, are still short people from trying to rehire after COVID. And so there's a supply and demand situation where it's coming into more equilibrium. The spike in job postings that happened post-COVID is coming down, but in terms of hiring is slowing down a little bit, but in terms of actual number of people employed versus number of people looking for work, it's still very strong.
This is good to hear. Let's talk about remote work. So there's, if I have to draw a timeline, there's COVID. We all go remote. Even if we don't want to, even if the employers don't want to, they must let us do it. I mean, at least if you can, depends on your industry. And then COVID is over-ish, however you can call it or not. And then we still work remotely at parts. Each company has different policies. Everyone's trying to figure out what to do, etc. And then, if I must, I'll put in Elon Musk at the middle just because I can. Elon Musk says everyone at Twitter, I buy Twitter, and then everyone must come to work from here and for many hours. And he even builds. Have you heard about it? He builds a little city. In Texas for his employees to live next to the factories and the SpaceX, etc. So he really doesn't believe in remote work. And now, since the market is slowing down, more and more companies are like, "Hey guys, you have to come back to the offices." We had the big drama around Apple, and then the big letter that Apple employees, including management, some of the management, talking back to Apple saying, "Hey, we don't see why we have to go back." But the more the market slows down and the more recession doesn't come, but at least the danger is here. We hear on more and more companies saying, "Guys, you gotta get home." And we even start to see some research around maybe it is better to go back to the office. And so, what do you see from the numbers or like the atmosphere?
Yes. So a tale of two sides of the marketplace. job seekers continue to love remote work as much as they've ever loved it. That doesn't mean they never want to come to the office. It means they want total flexibility to decide. They want the best of both worlds. They want the flexibility to work from home when they want to. They want to come into a nice, amazing office when it's available. And I want my, free lunch and all that stuff. And so that's totally rational and understandable. On the flip side, employers who were forced into embracing remote work initially saw, in many cases, a burst of productivity from remote work where there was less unnecessary distractions and meetings, are over time finding, in many cases, that collaboration, creativity, some functions are hard to do over Zoom.
Yeah.
And so and I think a lot of them, as I talk to employers, are finding that an A+ manager is an A+ manager over Zoom or in person. A B+ manager in person becomes a C+ manager over Zoom. And it's a little bit trickier, and it takes some more skills and some more confidence to be on the initiative. Yeah. And just by walking around the office, you don't get an alert like, oh, I need to go check in with that person. They look lost.
Yeah.
And so it's just easier as a leader of a big organization to say, it just feels easier to manage when I can lay my eyes on everybody.
Yeah.
And so they are, employers, when they have the opportunity to do so, are tightening up and bringing people back to the office part of the time.
Yeah. And so do you see, or can you see in ZipRecruiter people from outside of the United States seeking jobs in the United States, since now remote work is so available?
Yes. You can definitely see the demand for it because of visa and work, licensing requirements. It is, if you're a citizen who happens to be living overseas, that's one thing, and in some places it's easy to get a visa to be eligible for work. But in most cases, the willing labor overseas is not eligible for a job, so you need to set up an operation in that country in order to be able to hire.
But I think today we have solutions like, like Atlas and others that you are able to recruit someone from a different country if you wish.
That's right. That's right. So what these solutions will do is they will set up your operation for you, or share the burden of setting up an operation for you in these countries, so you get around work requirements in the U.S., which is both a regulatory and a cost element.
Yeah. I see here that the nice numbers that I see here is remote work is still overwhelmingly popular, with 20% of job seekers saying that they only want remote work.
Correct.
Only. And 40% saying they prefer it. Hybrid work continues to become more prevalent at the expense of fully remote work. 46% of new hires work remotely some days and in office some days, up from 40% the prior quarter. And I remember in COVID times, it was normal to see a person who got hired fully remotely, never met their boss face to face, and worked like that for at least a year, maybe two, with never coming into an office. And for me as a manager, for sure it feels a bit disconnected. I mean, it's really hard to create a culture that way, even though I love remote working, even myself and for my employees as well. But it's a tough way to create culture. I guess in ZipRecruiter, it's very flexible, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, we have taken the position that we want to be flexible, open up the talent pool as much as possible, and we're in a period of experimentation still, even though we're 3 years from the pandemic beginning, where we haven't laid out any long-term, this is our permanent policy. We're trying lots of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, a few words about ChatGPT and AI. How do you have data about what employees think about ChatGPT?
Yeah, well, we talk to job seekers, we talk to employees of.
You send them like what? I'm
survey,
a survey in the middle of my job seeking.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so what we found is that people are really interested in the concept of these large language models that they're hearing about, but they don't know really yet what to make of it or how it could impact their lives. In the technology space, people are really excited about thinking about this, but in the general public, this hasn't fully penetrated yet.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here, and actually I saw it in other sources, is that the concern from ChatGPT and AI is highest among the youngest job seekers.
Yes.
So the young people who have less education or just graduated, I can't imagine being that. Being 22 in these days, it is quite scary.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of historical analogies to this point where, the horseless carriages that became to be known as cars were going to put a lot of people in the horse industry out of business. And that was correct. The horse industry used to be much bigger than it is today. It also opened up an incredible number of jobs, and those jobs are better than shoveling horse manure.
Yeah.
So I think incredible opportunity will come out of this. I think the challenge for us as a society and for those of us who think about jobs is the opportunity that is created by this disruption that is coming will not be evenly distributed. And so how do we, as an economy, as a society, as a company, how do we deal with that?
Yeah. And also the fact that we can't really imagine what will be there. So with cars replacing horses, we knew what it's all about.
Yes.
With AI, it's like open-ended.
Yes.
It could be so many alternative futures.
Yeah.
And it is quite serious. Like if I were to decide what do I want to study in university today, I don't know. I mean, choose a career. I don't know. You could argue about I'm not sure if you saw it. There was a nice paper published, I think, around a month ago in mid-March from I don't remember the university, but together with researchers from OpenAI, and they published a nice research called GPTs are GPTs. Mm-hmm. Did you hear about it? Mm-hmm. So GPTs like ChatGPTs are GPTs, general purpose technology, meaning that's something like the invention of paper or electricity or cars, something that changes everything. Business models, employment, and so on and so forth. And actually, they showed a huge correlation between what, and mostly white-collar workers, tasks today with what GPT can actually do or will be able to do very fast with. They examined GPT 3.5 and GPT-4, and they showed higher correlation for the white-collar, more than the blue-collar.
Absolutely.
But the funniest stuff for me in this research is the title. I think this is like a nice new world example of what happens here. They are coming out of, it's a research paper coming from a university, understanding that in today's world, if you want anyone to read you, you need to have a cool title.
Yes.
So it's like they created this very, very, very cool GPTs or GPTs. It's memorable.
Yes.
And when did any research ever was the copy was memorable?
Everybody needs a clickbaity headline these days.
So it's kind of like everything is coming to a big mishmash. I don't know even how to describe it.
Headline writing GPT is going to be a well used.
Exactly. Maybe GPT wrote it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But you know what I think the scary part I think is true if you take the mindset that I need to go to college, I need to in my career get a set of knowledge and skills that I'm then going to be able to apply that set for the entirety of my career. It's not scary if you're willing and able to say, my skill set is that I have learned how to learn. And the knowledge that is going to make me really valuable 5 years from now, not only do I not know it, it likely doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And if you are the type of person who, like, whatever that knowledge is, whatever that change that is coming, I'm going to be able to assimilate, build that into my existing frameworks, change some things, mainly, use a bunch of soft skills I already have and apply that. That's going to be a formula for a very successful career.
I totally agree. In general, many of the soft skills are going to be much more respected in the coming years. And you just mentioned skills.
Yeah.
So now I have a really interesting point. We recently hear more and more about skills-based hiring. Mm-hmm. And I want to just explain what it is in a second, and then hear whether or not ZipRecruiter is already into it. So skills-based hiring is the trend that says, just by looking at where you graduated from, like what's your university degree, and where was your last 1 or 2 or 3 where you worked in the recent jobs, this is not a very valuable information for me as an organization, because I know that the future is unknown and we could go anywhere or to many different futures. And so for me, if I want to hire you, I want to hire you maybe based on your skills, not based on your degree. Okay, and this is it's a trend that becomes more and more popular. Today I heard a podcast interviewing someone from Workday, and they are already using skill-based hiring in Workday, meaning that if I'm the hiring manager, they will ask me what are the skills that are needed for the job I'm hiring for, and not what is the degree that I imagine that could be relevant. Like, what are the specific skills? Give me a list of 9 or 12 or 15 skills, and I'm going to look for people with these skills. But for that to work, we need the other side. We need employees to map their skills and show them out. And so I want to hear, what do you do in ZipRecruiter? Are you there yet? Are you not there? Is it still small and not relevant? Like, what do you think about it?
I think it's a really powerful paradigm. It is not the ultimate be-all, end-all. And let me explain what I mean by that. So what is one of the things that's super powerful about this idea is that in a world where we're increasingly aware of conscious and unconscious bias and the prejudices that lead some people to not get the same opportunity as others. In the process, the idea of skills-based hiring sounds fair and objective. When you peel it back to how it's implemented, it's as complicated, in different ways, it's as complicated as other forms of hiring. So I don't think it's a panacea, but it's a powerful framework. What I think is really powerful about it, for example, is a traditional job description would say, okay, you're required to have a graduate degree. You're required to have X years of experience. You're required to, have previously worked on this sort of a project. And if you can deconstruct the skills that previously having a degree and having X years of experience were a proxy for an actual skill that you wanted, you can open up people who come from non-traditional pathways into then being available as a highly qualified candidate. Yeah. That's really powerful and exciting. So that's what we're really interested in. And one of the ways we think about that, for example, is there are certain types of data in our algorithms where we will only include that data in a matching decision if it has a positive impact. So, for example, if you're looking to apply for an economics position, or where economics is a skill that's important, a financial analyst position, for example, and your undergraduate degree is in economics, but then you got a master's in art. The master's in art, actually, if you just let the algorithm go on itself because it observes human behavior, they would take that as a signal like, oh, you were into economics, but you now are into art and you're no longer as good. But we will exclude that and say, wait a second, the skills are there, as demonstrated by this bachelor's in art. We're not going to penalize you because you have a bachelor's in economics. We're not going to penalize you because you have a master's in art. And so that is one example of where I think the skills-based paradigm is really powerful. To think through what are the historical types of requirements we've had that have been actually a proxy for skills rather than skills themselves.
But do you have the full loop data? I mean, do you know where people got hired as well? Like, do you have the LinkedIn side of things as well?
Yeah, so in many cases we do. In some cases we don't also. But what we found is actually most powerful is that the most important thing that we can do with our technology is get people to the interview phase. And that's where really humans take over.
Right.
And so what we want to do is create an incredible set of candidates very quickly for an employer to be able to choose from that would then be ready for an interview or a phone screen or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the one of the powerful signals, for example, we use there is that we use our own software and bundle that with our job seeker, candidate that we provide to employers, and say, here's a dashboard or here's an applicant tracking system you can use to manage your entire process. And from that, we see who's getting messaged, who's getting invited to the interview, who's getting a thumbs up rating, whose resume is being viewed not once but 3 times.
Yeah.
And what's powerful then is not only do we use that for matching and who looks like a good match, but we also use that to motivate the applicant who says, hey, you applied to 10 jobs today. Great work. 2 of them you received a thumbs up rating on already. You're really onto something. And what's different about these 2 jobs? Let us show you 10 more jobs that look like those 2. And now you have a real sense of momentum.
Nice.
And that job seeker confidence, back to what we were talking about earlier, really rises.
So first off, that makes me think that if I was the minister of biases, and I wanted to learn about biases in employers, recruiters, I would go to you, because you can show me the correlations between what I have in my resume to what's my chance to get an interview, right? But more interesting, and that was, sorry that it wasn't cynical, it was for real, because we do have these problems of biases we all have. We us probably too as well. We have biases that we wouldn't admit, but we somewhere we have it. But even more interesting, if you do have data on where people actually got hired eventually, you might find out interesting things, like maybe that second degree in art is actually helping me.
Yes.
Right? So you would be able to show me that I have this weird thing in my CV which actually increased my chance to get the job, because in some weird way that we don't know to explain, but it's data, so we don't it actually helps.
Yeah. No, and even more powerfully, the way we think about it is not just to get hired, but what if it's a signal that you'll be successful after you're hired? So, how do we create insights where we learn that because the longer you've been working with ZipRecruiter as an employer, the better and better the technology gets. Our technology is learning, and so an employer who's been with us for over a year will get 4 times as many great matches as recognized by our algorithms, because we will get smarter and smarter. The system will learn about what works for you, and as you learn, you start to see. We'll highlight for you. Which candidates look really attractive, and your trust level in the candidates we flag as great matches will also increase.
Okay, now I get why you need the site in Israel.
Yes, exactly.
Why you need so many developers.
Exactly. There's a lot of data science and engineering that goes into that.
Okay, so last note on the data, laid off workers.
Yeah.
So we heard about so many layoffs from the big tech, Google, Facebook. Even Apple is getting there. They won the race for a bit but now they're getting there as well. Microsoft, everyone, and for sure if they got to layoffs, the smaller companies for sure. Can you give me some point to be optimistic about this?
Yeah. One is even with these layoffs, the companies that are grabbing the headlines, these large tech companies, have so many more employees than they had a few years ago. So when you flatten out the huge up with now a little bit of down from these layoffs, the trend line is they've needed more people and they're going to continue to need more people. What has changed? What's changed is their investors are demanding different things. It's rather than at 0% interest rates and no cost of money, growth at all costs, we'll worry about profits later, to now when interest rates grow up, all of a sudden there's a time value of money, and profits now are very valuable versus profits later.
Yeah.
And so there's tremendous pressure for them to be more efficient from a bottom line perspective. And secondly, back to the earlier thing where we were talking about, if you're implementing some difficult cultural changes like bringing remote workers back in person, creating a different tone in the employee-employer relationship is a powerful backdrop to getting people who previously said I would never consider going back into the office to now consider going back into the office. So these things are all convergent.
Wait, I'm not sure I got it. What do you mean by creating a different tone?
Well, when the one company says we're considering how we get more efficient, this is going to be the year of efficiency. We're probably going to have to we've laid off 5,000 people and we're probably now going to have to lay off another 5,000 people. And then you say, by the way, we're going back to the office 3 days a week.
Yeah.
The response to that is very different than we're hiring as fast as we can. We're desperate for people. Please refer as many of your friends as possible.
Yeah.
There's a different signal that's being sent about to the supply and demand imbalance. And so employees are accepting going back into the office, for example, at a much higher rate than the surveys would have indicated 12 months ago.
Got it now. Okay. So, Dave, thank you for all this data and conversation about the current workforce. I have a last question, and it's actually from a different world. And I'm sorry, it's just really interesting to me as someone who's coming from the startup ecosystem. You're both an investor, and again, you're now the president, but you used to be an employee, CFO. Yeah. What could you say that you learned from working in tech and took with you to the investor eyes? Like, are you a different investor than you used to be a few years back because you actually worked yourself in the tech company?
Absolutely. So a couple different things. One is, I think, being an investor this is a very non-traditional path, but being an investor is an incredible training ground to be a CFO if you're ever interested in that, because it's a skill set most CFOs don't have when they get started, is being able to talk to investors. And if you've been one, you're much better at it. So that is one example. But to your question, what changes you as an investor? The appreciation for how hard, when you're sitting there for 3 hours once a quarter at a board meeting as an investor, and you're like, hey, we talked 90 days ago about doing this and this. What happened to this? Yeah. Nothing happened. Well, when you've been in the trenches for those 90 days, it turns out a lot happened. And your appreciation for, and I've still been on a few boards of other companies as I've done this, your appreciation for the difficulty, the impossibility, in fact, of being successful, and it's through the dynamism of startup teams and entrepreneurs that they're able to overcome and do the impossible. The challenge that people are going through that makes me appreciate as an investor that the thing I can do to be most supportive after I make an investment decision is actually much more about emotional support, about how big the toll is, and much less about, hey, I've talked to 10 other companies, let me give you my amazing product idea. So that's one. And then when actually making the decision, the thing that...
Making a decision who to invest in?
Who to actually invest in. The thing that I've noticed is there are some teams and some people that have the ability over and over again to identify what is the most important problem and how do we quickly get to a good enough solve for that. And it's very tempting from a distance as an investor to say, who's come up with the most brilliant moat that could never be challenged and the perfect solution once to one big problem. And what I've learned as an operator is much more, it's actually about quickly coming up with good enough solutions over and over and over again at rapid speed, and then making good decisions. What's my next most important problem to solve? And not getting all the way to perfection, but using the 80-20 rule or something, and then quickly moving on to the next thing. And we'll come back and fix the bad decision we made last week if it turns out to be a bad decision. Otherwise, we'll just keep moving.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but now I have more questions because it's so interesting. So 2 more minutes of your time. So you said going with the good enough, and you also said on the one problem, meaning like you suddenly said focus. So there's one big problem we need to solve now, and we're clearing the rest of it to focus on that. And later on, we have a different one big problem. So it could be marketing and then sales, or business development and then marketing, or recruiting and then etc. And what other characteristics did you notice about good entrepreneurs?
So this was really helpful to me in having the confidence that jumping from the cushy side of the table and being an investor into being an operator was a good decision at ZipRecruiter, is that the culture of a company is very easy, I think, to actually get a pretty good sense for. And walking around or being in a meeting with multiple people, and just when their attention is not on you, but you're observing people work together, the body language, you can very quickly pick up on, is this a hierarchical culture or is this a very flat culture? Is this a culture of intellectual superiority, whoever can like convince somebody they're right, or is this a highly collaborative culture? And so that process of figuring out what culture am I going to thrive in as a board member, as an operator, is really important, because different cultures can really affect how good you're going to be as a contributor to that team.
And so I believe most of the listeners of Popcorn, the podcast, they want to work for companies with great culture, collaborative, less hierarchical, etc. Is there a way again, we don't have ZipRecruiter in Israel, so it's not like we're advertising anything. But I'm interested. Is there a way in ZipRecruiter to learn about the culture of the company?
No, that's not something. So you can learn a little bit about the company in company profiles and things on ZipRecruiter, but usually these companies at this point have for the most part, larger companies have an employer branding, entire initiative or team that is working on making sure there are videos, there's Glassdoor profiles, there's Comparably profiles to say what it's like to work there. But when you are actually interviewing there, I think is much better than the sort of vetted stuff that you'll find online. And so what you want to do, I think, as somebody interviewing there and considering taking a job, is you want to put yourself in a position, whether it's going into the office or participating as an observer in a meeting that you would actually be an actual participant in later, where you can just observe what people are actually like to each other, and you'll find what the real is.
That's an amazing tip. I think people go through very long journeys to get in a company. They don't have one chance to observe such a thing. So I think this is an amazing tip for people who are job seekers, also in Israel, to try and see how they get this chance of observing others in a team or whatever, and to see how they react to each other. Dave, thank you so much for your time and being a host in Popcorn. It's a great honor. I'm happy to meet you. We never met before, like 5 minutes before the podcast. So great meeting you, and I think it was really interesting and beneficial for our audience.
Thank you so much. It was great. Thanks so much.
Bye.